Especially this preliminary, okay, I'm pretty sure it would take on television. Yeah. But we have the forecast this time, but we're actually. Yeah. I've been fascinated with that, but I can figure out my consistency building. It's really. One comment, we changed.
Don't mind that.
Yeah, but we have. Yeah, that. I can't. I swear I don't like. Step into my house.
Outside that's the best. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard if you. Yeah, well, that you couldn't do it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Heil. I'm a senior project manager with Acorn Engineering. With me tonight is Ryan Senator with Ryan Senator Architecture. Happy to be here tonight for our first public meeting to review our current findings for the redevelopment, the potential redevelopment of the Riverview house, and what we've currently been doing behind the scenes, some investigations and analysis of the existing building, some potential concepts, but tonight is really to quickly just share our current findings and then open it up to public comment to receive some feedback from you all. So looking forward to the discussion. Quickly going through the agenda, we'll go over the project team, and then quickly go into site considerations, including existing conditions, flood and shoreland constraints, potential building envelopes, environmental conditions. Ryan will touch on architectural designs, including the existing building, potential redevelopment of the existing structure itself, and then the potential of if that building were to come down, what a new building could potentially look like. And then we'll open it up to the public comment period. So we are working with the town, obviously. I'm a senior civil engineer with Acorn Engineering. Ryan is our project architect. We also have a structural engineer, structural integrity, Aaron Jones, our septic designer, Albert Frick Associates. Brady Frick has been helping us with the septic design. And then for environmental asbestos and mold abatement recon, we've been working with Randy Jeffrey with air quality management services. So for those who are not familiar with the site, we are looking at the existing structure at 8 River Road, which is technically part of the recently developed Riverfront Park. Understanding the park is still kind of under construction, but now we're looking at potential options for what that house could be. If you want to move to the next slide. So just zooming in a little bit, the existing conditions. It's a little bit hard to see on here, but showing where the existing building is, and then highlighting some of the flood and permitting considerations associated with the shoreland. So there's an elevation 8 contour that kind of wraps and touches the building, and then heads back out towards River Road. That is a important elevation, as that is the designated special flood hazard area by FEMA. So that is our flood zone. And right now the building technically is currently within that. So we're looking at potential options to ideally get the building outside of it. So it's not subject to flooding requirements, including additional flood insurance. But then also looking at what we would have to do to, if this building was to remain, to flood proof the structure, and then meet current shoreland regulations as well. The blue line is a 75-foot setback from the mean high water line of the river. That line is important as it is the jurisdictional setback associated with the DEP Natural Resource Protection Act. So there's implications of building and disturbing within that zone as well. So if you want to flip to the next slide. The image on the left, again, is the FEMA flood zone map, and you can see that it does quickly touch the building. And then the image on the right is just a quick soil map to highlight that these soils are hydraulically rated C and D, which are poorly drained soils. It is a complex and mix of different soils, but generally speaking, these are relatively poorly drained soils and not super ideal for development and infiltration of stormwater runoff, and then the impacts associated with the weight of everything. This is pretty typical for a lot of Maine, particularly in areas adjacent to tidally influenced rivers and the coast itself. Next slide. So this is just showing what potentially a building envelope could be. This is not a potential building dimension, but just showing areas where a building could theoretically be placed on the site. So within the 75-foot line that I touched on, the blue line, yep, right there, you can see that portions of the existing building or all of the existing building is highlighted, and that's because it's a grandfathered use. So we're allowed to utilize that grandfathered use to redevelop the building if that is in case the direction that it's headed. Otherwise, we're trying to limit our disturbance within that NERPA setback to outside that 75-foot, which is why the majority of this building envelope is located outside of it. If you want to flip to the next slide. So Ryan will touch on the architectural design, but what internally the town and our design team have talked about for potentially uses, and we'd like to welcome your feedback as well. But what we've heard is a new redevelopment of the structure could be a community or welcome center, a retail or rental space for people renting bikes or kayaks that want to go on the river or the Merry Meeting Trail, a potential use for a cafe, and then others that we're looking. I will touch on before Ryan gets on, what we will be showing is the cafe, and that is due to the septic design. So the septic design is kind of the constraining factor in everything. As it's currently designed, we're only allowed so much flows that could go to that system, and that system be able to handle the additional flows associated with that. So we're looking at the worst case scenario of what the potential maximum build out of the septic system itself would be, which would be a cafe restaurant because of the amount of flows associated with that and the higher strength waste associated with that. But we're open to all uses. I think we'll be opening up a survey next week as well for additional input or others that weren't able to make it to the meeting. But with that, I will turn it over to Ryan to talk about the architectural.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is Ryan Senator of RSA. My office is in Portland. I'm glad to be here tonight. On the screen, you can see now we came up and did some existing condition surveys and created these plans. So this is how the building exists now, with the water being to the kind of the bottom of the screen. So the building as it is has some steps coming up into the front of it. on the top of the screen into a, I don't know if everybody or not everybody's been in the building, but I'll describe it a little bit. So there's a larger kind of space as you enter, and then some smaller spaces kind of around that. There's a small kitchenette, restroom, and then a stair down to the basement. The basement is relatively unfinished. There's a mechanical space in the lower left. And due to the elevation of that basement and the proximity to the river, we really need to address the water infiltration. What we're discussing at the moment are two options. One is, what can we do to the existing structure to make it update it, make it more usable for the town, and make it safer, more energy efficient. And so where we're arriving so far is potentially filling that basement and raising the building a little bit to get it out of that flood zone, to essentially try to eliminate those issues that are the water infiltration in the building now. Another option, as Pete had mentioned, is to look at building a new structure, and you'll see that actually in a second if you want to switch. Sorry, these are the existing elevations, so that kind of shows what the building looks like today. And here's a proposed renovation of that same structure. So some of the improvements we're talking about are making it handicap accessible. So you can see the ADA ramps, and potentially building a deck on the structure on the water side. That'd be nice. Energy efficiency improvements, new windows, siding, maybe a nice entry porch. So really trying to work with that existing structure, but make it a more modern, usable structure. And here you can see kind of two floor plan ideas. So the one on the left is reusing the existing structure and footprint. And then, like I said, adding the ADA accessibility ramp to the main entry, that deck on the water side. As Pete mentioned, this program we're showing here would be some sort of dining space and a kitchen. There's obviously many other uses that could be in the space. But we're looking at, providing a handicap accessible restroom, as well as a utility space that's outside the flood zone, which is another requirement. You definitely want your mechanicals out of that to protect the building. And looking at the existing structure, the structural engineer, said it was pretty, in, I would say, in average condition for its age. To renovate it into a use like this, it will take some reinforcement, and we will be, modifying some bearing walls. So definitely some structural roof reinforcement. Like I mentioned, kind of a new slab on that existing foundation. So we're exploring that as one option. The option on the right here would be a new building footprint, and you'll notice it's a little bit larger. So the existing building is approximately 930 square feet. This new structure would be about, we're showing 1,382 square feet. And what we're thinking is it would still be a one-story structure, handicap accessible. And we do have some elevations of that, but be a similar architectural view as to what's there today, just a little bit larger, and obviously it would be on a new frost protected foundation. But the program here is pretty similar. And the reason we're talking about preserving the existing, modifying it, or potentially a new structure, is really to compare the cost between those two options. I mean, at this point, new construction we're seeing these days in $350 square foot range. So if we do the math, that's around 450 to 500,000 for the new building. The renovation could be a bit less because the square footage is less, but sometimes when you get into renovating, the cost can equal new construction very quickly. So that's the analysis we're looking at right now. Is obviously if there's reasons to keep the structure, that's one thing, but they're saying, well, you could get a brand new building for about the same cost. So that's what we're trying to weigh right now. I don't know if we had one more elevation page. Yeah. So this would be, these would be some elevations of that proposed new structure. as you can see, so a pretty traditional design, gable roof, nice entry porch, and then that potential deck on the water side. So thank you.
And then just next steps, as we progress, as I mentioned, we will be opening up a survey, following this meeting. We're shooting for it to go live on the website here on Monday, and then have it open for a week. So we just be looking for additional feedback from you all, and anyone else that was not able to attend. So we'll hopefully have that running on Monday. And then we will be having a second public meeting incorporating the feedback we received today, at the end of February, February 25th at 6 p.m. same place here. And there will be a Zoom option as well. With that, we'd like to open it up to public comment. And yeah.
Just a process point, is there a Zoom link now currently working? I'm just getting some text from people who wanted to join.
Yeah, Kate Cutco's on it.
Okay. Can you just check your email? There's some people who are trying to join who emailed you. And just send them the link. Sorry.
Yep.
I found the link because I have access to the host email. That's the only reason. It's not posted anywhere that I could find, except in the host email itself. So, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is part of the concept that this still has to be a revenue generating proposition and that it has to be budget neutral to the town?
I'll defer to Yvette on that. I believe that is the intention, but
I think we're open to hearing from everybody what they want to be used for. I don't have any more information. And I'm trying to navigate this.
yeah.
I provide a little background on a couple of things. Dave Rasmussen, I was on the comprehensive planning committee when we began to redevelop the waterfront park. And it was still public works and they were still occupying a big shed down there. And there was a survey we had about 10 years ago, I think. Maybe joining kind of legislation as well. And we had a line item for the yellow house. And the survey basically broke down to like a third wanted to keep it, a third wanted to knock it down, and a third didn't care. And so we kept it because it's easier not doing anything. And it was providing some tax revenue. But the general discussion was like, well, if something does go in there, it should be public facing, like a restaurant or a rental space or a nature center, as opposed to private offices that nobody's going in because it's in the middle of the public park. So that's kind of how it just is stuck in here throughout the whole landscaping process. The landscape architect's general view is that if we're going to invest hundreds of hours of volunteer labor, hundreds of thousands of dollars of grant money, public money, that you should knock it down and build what you want when you need it to modern codes, to modern standards and all that. That's what we did with the public works building, which we were talking about, well, where they store all the tractors, you know, you could put new sides on that. That turned it into a new pavilion. And that got nixed because you'd have to do all these sorts of renovations to make it a usable space for people. Might as well make it exactly what you want if it's going to be over this like 10-year-long process. And that's where I fall on this project, is that knock it down, it's in a floodplain, we got to shoehorn something funny in there and there's not exactly a major demand for it. And we could build something if we need it, not in floodplain, not with asbestos and mold and whatever else that went on in there, for potentially a similar cost. My 2 cents. Thank you. Thank you.
My understanding is that this plan has been worked up is for the possibility of restaurant cafe usage because that would be the most that would need to be added in as far as improving the existing or even rebuild as far as, utilities, drainage, et cetera, sewage, all that?
Mostly because of the septic utilities, because that's
Right.
the
That's the big one.
highest demand associated with that, particularly with the existing field itself is at capacity, but we're
Right.
allowed to do pre-treatment devices. So through a pre-treatment device, we can add additional flows to the system. So by utilizing the restaurant use, it shows us what theoretically could happen. And we showed the floor plan of the restaurant here, but really we're looking at it as kind of a blank slate. It could just be
Right.
an open room for welcome community centers. It could be, rental office. But what we showed today and the floor plan would be relatively similar regardless of which use it ends up being. And I think there's flexibility on the potential uses. I would say the biggest add-on to the restaurant is a commercial kitchen, which comes with a significant cost. So if that could be, an add-all later and we just build it and retrofit it as a, forget the term, blank slate, but
Yeah.
and then the commercial kitchen could come on later. So we're open to all possibilities. We want to receive feedback from the town. To the point about the surveys, we have looked at those, and that's why we're starting a new one because they are 10 years old at this point. But yeah, so we're open to all suggestions.
Has anybody looked into the nature center concept? Has anybody talked to Audubon or anything like that? I know they do a lot in Mid-Coast with their nature center there, which looked a lot less intense in terms of what building infrastructure needs to happen. That's a way to work with the plan for this waterfront rehabilitation. It would seem to align with the whole environmental aspect and interaction aspect without necessarily going down the road of getting into the restaurant business. It might be, since so much needs to be done to this building that you're basically starting from scratch. What I'm hearing in very much layman's terms, because I'm not an architect, I wish I was, but we're either starting from scratch or we're totally revamping, and either way, we're looking at what, $500,000-ish?
Probably.
Right. So, I mean, I'm wondering how much less it would be to do something a lot less ambitious. I'm very much spitballing, but curious about that.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to anyone in particular. I think that's a great idea for a nature center in the Audubon. So we can certainly follow up with that. I think regardless of what the use is, the building itself is gonna be within that range as well. So as I said, the commercial kitchen isn't really factored into those calculations
Okay,
that Ryan
that's what I'm
mentioned. Yeah, that would be separate in addition to. So I think base product, just like a clean building that's either rehabbed or new building, that is what we're looking at to allow for whoever does want to occupy the building and just try and make it as flexible as possible.
Okay.
Now, you brought up tearing the building down, building new. Permitting, because that's within shoreline. What, have you looked to see if that would be grandfathered? Because
So
if we have to move back 250 feet, we're gonna be on the other side of the road.
That's a good point. So the shoreland does extend 250 feet, but we're actually within the General Development 1 district. So within the General Development 1 district of the shoreland zone, your setback is only 25 feet from the river. So theoretically, from the shoreland zoning perspective, we could go up to 25 feet. The building itself now is plus or minus 56 feet from the river. The more constraining factor is the DEP NERPA regulations, which is a separate kind of very similar because it's obviously dealing with the shoreland. But that is 75 feet to go through a permit by rule within DEP NERPA. There are allowances to grade within that 75 feet, and including utilizing the existing grandfathered use associated with that and footprint, and we can grade into it. But that's why the building envelope that we were showing was majorly, it's not a word, made
Primarily outside.
primarily outside that 75-foot buffer, but there was a small section where we are utilizing that existing footprint as it's grandfathered.
Yeah, then you brought up another thing with the septic system, right now it's got a 500 gallon holding tank home.
Yeah.
Has no leach field.
Yeah.
We did draw a 2-inch line down the road to put a leach field, which will be out towards the trails, the field out there. Any of your costs include putting that leach field out there and the pump up station to get it out?
So we would, the costs that Ryan had given it are strictly just building costs. It doesn't include any site utility work. So what will end up happening, regardless of the existing building remaining or a new building, we will be putting in a pump station and a pre-treatment device to pump to the existing or subsurface. There isn't. Well, it's designed, so when it goes in, because there's designs
Design.
with
We
great.
never have.
No, those are new design.
There's a design.
Out in the backfield.
From
It's
the
been-
back.
Yeah, it's been designed.
Yeah.
It's not there, but it's been
Right.
designed.
Yeah.
And the pre-treatment is part of this investigation.
But the septic system, the design septic system, that's not part of the 500,000. If it was a new building, that would be money that would, is that what you're saying?
So
septic here in
the
front?
septic system itself, the actual leach field is part of a separate project. That's not included as part
So
of this
the town
project.
is to consider that if we had a new building, that the town would then have to, is that what I'm understanding you're saying? That my problem, that would be.
Yeah, the long-term project is actually to connect the house that's at Malay to the yellow house, to the new bathhouse that would be at the new park, and then out to the leach field. So you'd be able to tie a lot of this in with the Land and Water Quality Fund grant that we're already underway with, so yeah, that's kind of how these would all work together, so it would just, I mean, yes, we have to design the pre-treatment
And a
aspect
pump
of the yellow
station.
building part.
Either or, you can
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, my name is Richard Joyce. I'm living in Bothell now. Years ago, I went to Richmond High School. Moved down to Bothell and still went to Richmond High School, Montague Maritime Academy. After going to sea for a number of years, I built my first house in Westover, Vermont, looking at the Mount Snow ski area. I ended up later on selling that. Moving down to Wilmington, they had a 7-mile long power company reservoir used for hydroelectric generation. I designed and built a 51-foot pontoon boat that could carry a busload of people, 54 passengers. I did tours on the foot. I was in the canoe and kayak rental business. Right now, I have a 17-foot kayak I built out of main white cedar. And I look at this project and I don't see any revenue coming in on this project. We have a unique area in this area with Merry Meeting Bay. You got 2 major rivers flowing in there. You got the 4 minor rivers flowing in, the Cadence, the Abbey, the Eastern, and the Muddy River. And it is unique. In my vision on this building is to set it up so you can take photographs of the uniqueness we have here. And put these photographs up so people could come, walk through the building and see the photographs and say, this is what's in this area and this is what we got. And I don't see any way to make money out of this. And if you can't make money out of this right now, our property taxes have gone up 51% in the last 3 years. And at my age, in 2-3 days, I turn 86 years old. I don't have money to pay these property taxes. But you just want to keep spending. And we can't take it anymore. We gotta stop it.
I think with a town of 3,000 people, we have to be really aware of what we're doing for that building. I love that building. It was a fertilizer mill. We weighed our cattle there. It's a great building. It's a great piece of Bothell. And although I understand I don't understand the movement in Buckingham. Was away for a lot of years, came back, bought our house. I'm appalled, to be honest with you, how Buckingham is changing. We're not Thompson. We're not Buckingham. The other thing I think that this committee needs to consider is that we have one restaurant here in town. And we've got the Buckingham Community Store that should be opening, that they had great hopes to get that takeout up and running. Another restaurant cafe is going to kill them with a town of 3,000 people.
Might be a perfect opportunity, so.
Yeah, jump in, I know,
We
Jump
are the
in.
current owners of both.
and this is still you guys.
Yeah, absolutely, so. Our biggest concern, and trust me, I have learned a lot just in the presentation here, understand that the preliminary renderings are a sort of worst case scenario in terms of septic development, but when I saw a cafe on paper, when the meeting notes were put out on the Buckingham website, my wife and I just struck panic in us. We're about 8 weeks, give or take, away from opening the doors. Sundries and small grocery items, that's not gonna sustain the business there. Our business model, the differentiator between folks that have tried to run that business in the past, and what we're going to do is focus on to-go food up front, and then in the not too distant future, by summertime, we will have dine-in options. We're in the process right now of structuring an ADA accessible restroom so that anybody can come, sit in or take out. We've hired a chef. I think the quality and consistency of the food that's gonna come out of this place is going to be nothing like you've ever seen come out of the Buckingham Country Store. And when I say that, I don't want anybody to panic that, accessibility and affordability is a key pillar that Ashley and I are devoted to in building the business and sharing those notions with the chef that we hired. So we're really, on this pendulum here of, do we scale back? The business model that we have on paper, the things that we think that we're going to be able to afford to the community, and more importantly to our employees. We're talking about competition for revenue, but we're also talking about competition for help, for good quality help to be there. That is a familiar face that's going to provide the level of service that we so badly want to offer to the town and to the community. So I know that this was one option on paper, but I would hope that maybe we can generate a little bit more background. Maybe it's posting the results of the previous survey, understanding that 8, 9, 10 years ago, the town was in a different place. The dynamics around that building were completely different, but very anxious to see what the survey itself is shaped like, what the questions are, what kind of content we're trying to generate there, because you hit the nail on the head. I think that, once upon a time, there were multiple general stores in this town. Once upon a time, there were multiple restaurants and opportunities for people in this town. The store had to close because it wasn't generating enough revenue. And so we have to pivot, and what we're going to offer to the town is the general store and have the conveniences there, but also, our primary income stream is gonna have to be the kitchen. That's gonna be.
Well, you guys have the support of this town. The
Yeah.
town meeting, we voted to
Right.
not have gas stations come in or to that. So I would hope that we would put something forward before we let people that the town have said, let's give them a shot. Because they're waiting for the next town meeting, because this town needs more revenue. The other piece that concerns me is that we have a $500,000 building, no matter how we look at it. It's gonna cost $500,000 whether we repair this building, get it out of the flood zone, or whether we build a new one. There's going to have to be somebody who, I understand the nature center, I get that, it's going to have to be manned. We are going to have to pay a salary for somebody who is there. So you guys can't answer that, you guys were just building it, but the committee needs to answer that. Because we have this TIF fund, we have this grant fund, yeah, we wanna use it. But what ends up happening is then the taxpayers have to foot that bill. Because we have to put an employee in there.
Well, there is the option of renting it to somebody that then
Yeah,
runs the
if
business
it's
in it.
if it's a zero budget and it brings revenue into the town, hello, yeah.
Right.
You're gonna have a lot of people excited about that.
Right.
Is that what we're thinking about though? And I know it's just the first planning meeting, but in those survey questions, are there questions like that in there? Are there going to be questions like that? Like, hey, is this a restaurant? And have you thought about how that's gonna impact the current restaurant in Bodenham and the country store who wants to come in and make a business out of that? Are you thinking about, like, we could be building a new building for $500,000? Is that a place where you all wanna spend your money when we have other buildings in this town who could use, that it could use upgrading, I think, renovating? You know, I don't know what's in the survey questions, but I hope that information gets out to the townspeople.
Yeah.
Cause they need to know that. I don't think you're gonna have anybody in Bodenham who's going to say, oh, let's turn down a revenue producing business in our town. I mean, we've been screaming for that, right? But to have just another thing, in the nature center, that's awesome, but it's going to have to be manned by somebody. We are going to.
Oh,
need
that's
somebody
what I'm
to
saying.
have-
And what I'm trying to say is if you had a facility that was owned by the town, so the town would have say on whoever used it, which is a big part of all of this, you know, we wanna preserve Bodenham, we don't wanna just, you know,
Yeah.
rent it to whoever or sell it to whoever, and then they can do whatever they want,
Right,
you know,
right.
once what's gone, it's gone.
Right,
If it's rented to somebody that came in, like a nonprofit organization that runs a nature center, that means they run it with their own people and they pay the town to use
and
that spot.
that's why you asked, have you reached out to see
Right.
what's out there?
Right,
Yeah. have
I
no idea
mean,
how
because,
realistic
you know,
it is.
there are many nature related, environmental related organizations out there that I would imagine would love to engage in our town in that way, because we do have a very unique town, very beautiful town.
Absolutely.
And what I keep hearing in the brief time I've been here from everybody I've run into is how people in this town want to preserve that area, want it to be a natural thing, don't want to build it up and have it be, you know, like more like Topsom, you know, like what you were saying. And to be able to have that
If
ability
it's not
to,
gonna come on the backs, and I understand the school budget, you know, is a piece of what's going on, but if it doesn't come on the back of the tax.
right, I mean, we're renting,
It's fine.
but it's been 10 years since this talk has been going on for 10 years.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what, the town's been renting this building to a tenant, so the way I see it is, improve the building, improve the amount of rent we can get for it, and then go forward. But if we just sit there and let the building rot, then that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah,
Those survey questions, or do they have those things in there? I mean, I know this is just the first meeting, but is that kind of the kind of information that's being put out there? or-
We're gonna be incorporating all of the feedback we hear to try and craft those questions.
I mean, there was mention about boating, right, as well, in your options that you
Oh,
already have.
yeah, that's certainly a potential rental for kayaks and or bikes, could potentially be.
Now, is the idea that the town would be running this thing, or
No,
would
that-
we rent
I mean,
it to
to-
somebody that runs this
To
thing?
your point, and what
Yeah.
we've discussed all along is the town owns it, but it would be rented out to someone else. So
Gotcha.
It's not an additional burden to the town, but it
Right,
would be a generator or revenue generator for the town. So
And
that's
it's
the intent.
managed right now, the town manages the rental right now?
And are there like environmental or financial deadlines that were, like, is there a timeline for this project or something that is?
I think that once we know what the actual costs are, then you could actually start to try and market the building to somebody who would be interested in, you know, looking at that square footprint and being like, oh, yeah, you know, if it was like this, we might be interested. And then,
but are you asking if there's a deadline till we have to do something about this building by
Yeah.
X day or else?
Well,
Or
like, I'm
it's just
thinking
sitting there?
of Where, I guess, backing up, like, where did the discussion about this building come up of like, we wanna move forward with building it or tearing it down or moving it, like.
we applied for a brick grant over a year ago just to do the investigation, so
Okay.
there is like a string of revenue that we can tap into to help deal with the hazardous materials and that kind of thing, but until we actually have a clue what the costs are, we don't really have any further to take the conversation. This is truly just a scoping exercise, so everyone's aware of the conditions of the building, what we can do with it, what the potential is, and then we can decide to see if it's
Does
worth
this-
marketing.
Not that it matters, but does this go to town vote?
Anything
Like
would go to
before
the select board for
Yep.
sure.
I'm sorry.
I'll let them.
Would this go
Okay,
to a
okay.
town vote? like, once this is all set and we, yeah, there's a proposal after all of, you know, the meetings that we have. Would it go to a town vote this meeting? The chair recommends.
So there are actually four of us here tonight.
Yeah, I know.
I see you. And any, big expenditures by the town comes first to the select board, and then that does go to town meeting. So whatever gets developed, first of all, I commend everybody on doing the survey.
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm wondering how many people we can actually get that survey out to. Like, what is the way, what are the ways in which we're gonna disseminate that, and how many people do we anticipate being able to respond to the survey? I'm very interested in that because we very often don't get the number of surveys back that would really give us a broad understanding of what the community wants. I mean, it's the same everywhere, surveys, but just hard to get survey responses. I do think that what I've heard already is that the people in the room and many others in the community support first the Bohemian Country Store. So I think taking the restaurant off the table and the picture that everybody sees might be important, because it's hard to think creatively of what to do when so many of us are going, not that.
Right, it's a major hot button in this town, for sure.
So, I do hear that folks are interested in revenue generation. Certainly, the, any discussion of that yellow building from, comprehensive planning time to other discussion has been, how is it compatible with the waterfront plan? And how does it also create income, and how does it support the other parts of the artists,
Right, there's a lot of stakeholders. They're, like you're mentioning, the artists that are right down the road, et cetera, et cetera.
So I think there are people who don't really care whether we have yellow thing there. And I would like to see ways in which we can get really broad response to what we might do. And what it might cost in the long run, I think is probably a discussion point for many people. Who, I mean, I don't think anybody's wild about high taxes, no matter what part of Maine you're in. So, I mean, it's a concern for us. So that revenue generation, I think it's definitely a question, and I think it's also important to protect the assets that we have here. And yes, it will go to the voters.
Thank you. Also, it's been a little bit hard for people to understand, even I'm a little gray on it, the way that this is financially separate from the waterfront development project. That this building is a separate little spot, and you know exactly what part of the project is designated separate, because I know this building is being dealt with separately from the entire waterfront project. And I think it would be helpful for the town to have a little more clarity that this isn't just part of all of that, it's kind of separated out, the town is still gonna own this little chunk. And what that means going forward as far as our financial obligation to this building and spot, it's or lack thereof, et cetera, you know, I think a little clarity on that would be helpful to townspeople with the survey too.
Well, so just to let everyone know, like currently the Land and Water Quality Fund that is helping us redevelop the park down there. We have not finalized like the final blueprint. We will do that when we're closing out this process, well, this grant with them. And we've been able to be flexible with that, so we are working within what we're allowed to touch. The Land and Water Quality Fund is not supporting any economic development. So we cannot even speak about this yellow building, and we have to work in our ways to talk about the septic.
Right.
But the TIF is there for economic development, and so we can still use that pot of money to go after grants that are different than what we're doing with the rest of the park. But they are in tandem in their own economic development ways. It's a, it's a location that has a lot of potential. And it could be a resource towards the park itself. If it is renting things, if it is showcasing local art, if it's, the Merrimack Trail is going to be coming through, and that is something that they could see and they could come in to learn more about the town.
Yep.
That's something that they, that little real estate, as we talked about, is basically grandfathered. So we're in a situation right now where we are already generating money from it. We can use the TIF to revamp that building and keep it as that use. Is that the best use? Is that, is that really giving a lot back to the community? Of course it is, tax wise, but is there another business that would be interested in that? We can't even really talk about that without having a clue what that might cost and what some kind of like arrangement would look like.
What is the approximate amount of this TIF fund that you're talking about? It doesn't have to ballpark, just for the sake of everybody who hasn't seen all that.
I'll have to go back and look, but honestly, we can every year go back to the TIF and change any numbers we want or change any of the line items that we have in there. I mean, that's how we got the old town hall renovated. So at any point, we can open it up to town meeting to say we'd like more, less,
Right.
we want the housing, yeah.
I think there's a number on your website, maybe when I was doing research on this, there's a number that's someplace out there that's talking about the TIF money in the grant, and then like 75,000 of the TIF money in that grant.
75% of this project here that costs around 50,000 is paid for by a FEMA brick grant. 25% comes from the TIF, so it's a little under 11,000. But as far as, I could run downstairs and go get the documents about the TIF, but I don't have it right off the top of my head. But nonetheless, we can certainly cover whatever it is that we decide and make sure it fits.
In my business in Vermont, I had about 18 units of canoes and kayaks, a combination. And it was all on the honor system. I had a mailbox on the front of my door. People would come up there, fill out the information and put their money in it, stick it in the mailbox. I had a little two-wheel cart, so they'd run it down, put it in the water, bring the cart back. And it run perfectly with no one there or anything. People will be very honest about doing things like that. You don't have to make it a very complicated thing. And I've had the experience doing it, and I know that. Now, I had a little different situation because we're near the ski areas, so a lot of vacation homes. A lot of vacation homeowners that would come up there on the weekend and then they'd come down and go on the reservoir. And I went through a process of trying to bring my cruise boat that I built over here. But the people that now own it said they're gonna use it and set it up in the backyard. But of course, here is a lot of complications. It'd have to be Coast Guard inspected. I'd have to get on the Coast Guard license again. I used to have a second mate's license and he crossed tons of the ocean. So I mean, I know what I into. So these are things that can be done to enhance things. But when people come in, where are they gonna? There's no place to really do anything. The store's gonna open up, but that's not a high revenue producer.
Don't tell them now.
You mentioned the grant that is connecting the septic of the existing outhouses to potentially new ones. Is it? Did I get that right?
So the park, the new park, the Riverfront Park has on the master plan shows a bathroom. We do not have funding for that, but I'm trying to get the next round of the Land and Water Quality Fund to incorporate that pavilion, maybe even bring it across the street to the Malay and then get this whole thing going.
Do you think that grant is contingent on the Yellow House piece of the puzzle in there?
No.
So
It's very separate.
We don't, yeah, economic development isn't associated with the park.
So like,
In that sense.
my opinion of bulldozers, like, you could still get the grant money for improving water quality and getting the septic for a new bathroom, if we go that route, and improving, then potentially connecting it over to Malay, like, without the L house.
Yeah, we can have
Do all-
real septic eventually in either scenario.
Okay, cool, yeah, just like, if this was like a keystone piece in there that we needed to.
I'm still not understanding the septic though, so if the building were to be built, would it have a septic system that would support that building? Does that make sense?
It would tie into the designed septic fields. So it would have an individual pump station and pre-treatment device from the building, which would then be pumped through a force main and ultimately end up in that shared communal subsurface wastewater system.
And then that would, I'm looking to this, I'm sorry, I don't even know who you are, I apologize. But would that, if there was a new building that was built, would the current septic system support that building, or would the town have to do something with that septic system to support this building? Because what these guys are saying is it's not part, and I could be messing this up totally, because I'm way out.
A pre-treatment device would need to be installed for the new building in order for the approved septic designs to accommodate the additional flows of the redevelopment of the yellow house.
I think what I'm getting hung up on, and I'm really not trying to be a jerk, is the approved designs. Does that mean what is actually currently there, physically there? Or is this a design of something that needs to come in and be built?
I believe it still needs to be built from what I heard.
So we could be building a building, not having a septic system that's going to support this building. That's my question.
It'd be additional cost, because we have the design, but it's not fully installed.
So that's gonna be really important to inform the public on as we go forward, because if you have a number of the building and then people aren't aware that we're gonna have to spend this much building to bring the septic up to code or whatever, people are gonna need to have those numbers.
Is the current septic currently up to code? I mean, you said that there's a tank, right?
It's grandfathered, so it's.
Can I take
Sure.
a stab at this? I'll take a round. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have a septic design already to install a leach field
Yeah.
up by the Cat Ants trails that can potentially service the bathrooms at Maley, new bathrooms if they were to be built at the Riverfront Park and the Yellow House, if we put the pretreatment system in at the Yellow House. So that leach field should be covered under the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant that we're already working with. That will pay
Besides
for
the
the
plumbing off the yellow building.
right, it'll pay for the leach field that would service all three of these. If we were to do this building project, we would have to install a special septic tank for the building that could be pumped into that shared leach field.
Plus you're still having to tie in too, you're gonna have to lay that pipe too, right?
The pipe.
The pipe's already there?
The pipe's there.
That's,
Yeah,
that's.
This is
what I
the
wanna be clear
problem,
on.
we're piecemealing everything to try to get it all fit together at the end.
Gotcha, that's what I
But
was.
we would
clear.
have, in order for that leach field to be able to handle this, it was the house, the yellow house would have to have a pre-treatment system. But
Right,
the payment for the leach field would be out of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This project would only have to fund the tank and the pre-treatment system.
And the funding for that is in what you guys are planning. That's that pretreatment piece that you're talking about, that special tank. for
Right,
the
that would be
house
included with
is
this
included in
project.
that. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me.
I'm asking folks online if they've got any questions, but I don't see any takers besides the comment that earlier that they were agreeing with everything that Logan had said.
I do have a question. I'm sorry, I can't find my little raised hand thing. And I'm sorry, I have the town logo. I'm not representing the town tonight. I'm just Kate Cutco. If a business was to come forward, what would be the process by which a a potential business would show interest in this process? How would that happen? And then I have a follow-up question.
We haven't gotten that far.
Okay. So is it possible if someone wanted to pursue a guiding business or something related to the waterfront, to the river, to the use of the river? Um, is there opportunity for a private dock or any kind of use of that direct access to the river?
No, I don't think so. We just did all that shoreline stabilization stuff and we have the kayak launch there already. I mean.
So a guiding business
You
or
could do it. I'm not saying no, but I'm just mentioning what we've already invested in.
I
Yeah.
would have to assume that there's probably a guide or two that already uses our public launches to guide their sports, so I'm not sure how that would be any different. I don't think the private dock would be a feasibility just because of the shoreland work that's already been done, but as far as using the public launch, I'm sure it's already being done.
Right. So it could be if it was a rental, if they're renting kayaks or bikes, like you said, they would just use the hand carry boat launch that is so beautiful and the other water access.
I believe that's the
Yeah, I
intent.
mean, I'm not gonna say no to anything. I have no idea.
Okay. So it's going to be exciting to see who comes forward with some ideas. I was hoping that I'd hear lots of really creative ideas that anyway, I'm looking forward to getting the word out for people to come forward with their ideas so that then it sounds like the town would work with that business owner to build a building that would suit them.
Doesn't sound like that's where we're going with it though. It sounds like we've got not to be disrespectful, but the cart before the horse. You guys are talking about a building and what that would be without thinking, I'll take that back. Without really putting stuff out and feelers out about who is here. Who would like, am I wrong with that?
I just think that that's what this is step one, right?
Gotcha.
That's what we're asking
Gotcha.
right now, please.
Let
us know.
I would ask that we back up a little bit and look at this and see.
As a member of the committee, which I keep hearing, I'd like to just, I'm Lee Parker, and I've been on the committee for
Oh, I'm not trying to be rude.
15 years, maybe. Forever, as long as it's been. Our job is to respond to ideas that come in through the town or requests that come from the select board. And our job is to do due diligence to look into possibilities. We don't ourselves put together a recommendation. If we did, Wendy Rose, who used to be on the committee, would have by now a baker in the town, because that's what she's always wanted. So that's just to say that we are ears, that's our job. We don't have something that we're not showing you. So I just.
Well, I don't think you do.
Well, I keep hearing the idea that we might, or that we already have a plan that we.
No, that's my concern. My concern is that I mean, you do have a plan. There are two plans there. There are one, renovating the building.
There are two, let me just correct you for a moment.
Yeah.
Two options.
Okay.
One is to rebuild on the same spot and make that building code with everything else.
Yeah.
The other one is to build a larger building.
Right.
In a different spot. Those are two options.
Okay.
Now, when they were looking at the options, they did what was responsible, which was to look at not the worst case scenario, but the one that would cost the most money. And that is a seated restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
That's just fact. So that's why that's on there. I agree that probably at this point, that's now a flashpoint, it needs to be removed.
But nonetheless, that's how that came about. So
I think as a townsperson, taxpayer, I could be the only one. I have big concerns about, and I understand its options, I get it. But I have big concerns about talking about $400,000-$500,000 for a building renovation or a new building. Without, and I understand it's the first meeting, I get it. But without having other options around, this is what we're thinking, this is how we might generate revenue. This is, you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I think that it's impossible to sort of figure out what kind of revenue you can generate without having an understanding of what the costs are.
I hear you. I guess as a taxpayer, I would ask that would be some of the next steps.
Makes sense. We meet the first Tuesday of every month, from 6:30 to 8. You're always welcome to join us or
Do you
to
have
join
it
us.
via Zoom?
Yeah, we're all
jobs.
here.
You're via Zoom.
Yep. And we love new members. I'm not being facetious.
Yeah.
Marty, were you trying to come off mute?
Yeah, I thank you. First I want to thank the engineers for doing the work. I'm relatively new to this committee. I've been on about 3 months, maybe 4. So I'm still working my way through what it is we do. And I think that's just typical of being a new member. I would say that I would like to say to the woman that was just speaking and to the public that I don't really feel like there's anything predetermined about what's going to happen here. Because, I think the big question is, as we just sort of talk in general terms, is what could be successful there? I mean, I will say personally that I don't think another small retail shop would be something that, the Bowden community, the Bodenham community could support. Is there something that could be somewhat retail or service oriented? Yeah, I think there could be, but I really don't know what that would be. And I think this is part of the process is that folks are coming out and giving us some opinions and giving us some thoughts. And there may be somebody who says, yeah, maybe, we could present a business model. But we certainly don't have much to go on because the actual type of the building and the size of the building would be dependent upon what you would perceive as what's going to go in there. Because, I mean, other than that, I might sort of throw a dart at a wall and say, well, is this an opportunity to have that big sign that says we'll build to suit? And then, you sort of build a big square, you have, 1,000 square feet, and then somebody comes and says, yeah, I can run a business out of here. And I want it, this is what I want the layout to look like. But, that's an alternative. That would be an approach, but I'm not sure that I think that would be an effective approach. So I guess I don't really have a question. What I really want to say is we're really working at trying to get our arms around the potential for the site. And for me, it really is do we rehab the existing building or do we build something new? Understanding that there are benefits and disadvantages to both of those options. But also I want to thank those of you in the community that have come out and just keep giving us your ideas. Thanks.
Anyone else out there in Zoom land want to speak?
Yeah. I've never been inside the building, so I don't have a really good sense of this space. Seeing it on paper really doesn't translate, so what's the, like 20 by 16 or whatever of the largest space in there, do you have that off the top of your head?
Yeah, are there any current pictures of what's going on
I
in
can
there?
bring up the
Yeah, yeah,
pictures from
sure.
Yeah.
the mold asbestos report.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, cause it's, if there could be, it's hard to think about what would be a good revenue producer without thinking, oh, would it be three smaller sections where we'd be getting revenue from maybe one office and one retail spot and one, somebody who's coordinating riverfront
Right.
work. But I don't really have a sense, having never been in the building of, could you set that up that way?
Yeah, I mean, the floor plan now is basically 4 spaces, if you will.
Yeah.
And then there's that, I don't know, pull it up. Oh, actually, they have nice images here.
I'm not sure I can zoom in any more than that.
So, but the image on the upper left is kind of the largest space as you walk in. So you could imagine that's a, the size of a relatively large living room, if you would, for your perspective. And then the other 3 rooms are like the size of a bedroom. So just to put that in
So
perspective.
like 14 by 14 or 12 by 12, the smaller ones, or maybe a 30 by. Is
Yeah.
the larger office like the side of the building, the front of the building?
It's the non-water side. So
So that's all the way across the front of the building?
no, so it's
So it's the door by the
yeah,
side.
it's 22 feet by 13 feet,
Yeah.
that space.
If you look at the second picture down.
Sorry,
Back to that one.
sorry.
That was the waiting room and there was a glass window and that's where the cashier stayed when it was. So you had a larger waiting area and then you had the office where they took the money from the bank. So it was, it's. So the office area behind that is very small. It's only 10 by 10.
Yeah, so the reason I'm asking is that, we're talking kind of about one retailer or one way to let them have, some. But it may be interesting for folks to think about 3 smaller concerns. So somebody that wanted an office might need a bedroom size. Somebody that wanted to do some waterfront rentals or exploration or guide might also need a relatively small space. Whereas we might still have room for the history, the nature, the whatever as part of, a passive area where we can talk about the history of Birmingham or what makes the, New Bay so unique.
Well, there's lighthouse places that they have, yeah.
So I just want to throw that out there, that maybe one of the questions or one of the ways to explore is if there were multiple revenue producing or 2 revenue producing and 1 revenue neutral spaces, how that might be configured as well. I could see perhaps a small retail space. Antiques, whatever, I know that for a long time it had an antique space.
There.
Yeah, yeah. So I just, opening that up, antiques is one thing that has been there, rental office, retail, waterfront, guide or information, history of Bohemia. And as long as I think we have to be revenue neutral at least. So that we're not costing the taxpayer something, but adding value to the waterfront and to the community. Throw those all in there. You want a couple of ideas,
Yeah.
but I like the idea, as I've been sitting here, I like the idea of not having to think about the building having only one use.
Is there any way to put up a way for people to actually put out proposals for having a business there instead of chasing our tails and guessing what people might want to do? I mean, is there an avenue for businesses to propose? I would like to be your future tenant. This is what I have in mind. Just to get some idea of what people are gonna want to spend money in. I mean, at the end of the day, who's spending the money? The tenant.
Yeah, I think after we close out this part of the project, we have the cost estimate stuff, that's where, yeah, we'd be headed to figure that out. It's new territory for me. I've never done this in my professional life. I'm sure that there's resources out there that will help us navigate it, but.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if getting a feel for that now would help us figure out what to do with the space, you know what I mean? I feel like we're trying to answer a question we haven't even asked yet.
Right. I'll dovetail off that. I mean, Dave mentioned in the first commentary tonight that a third of the townspeople that responded, we've or Dave, does anybody know roughly how many responses there were to that?
Yeah.
Less than
Yes,
100?
I have.
Like,
There's 48 voted in favor of keeping it, 43 voted to remove it, and then they had another survey at a different time that had a total of 46 responses. And of those 46, 16 said they wanted the Welcome Education Center, 14 said they wanted to be renovated and rented out as income-based, 9 said that it should be removed and kept as open space, and 7 said it should stay the same and be rented out as an income base for the town.
And what was the date of that survey?
So the 2018, both of those were in 2018.
Is it prudent for us to determine whether or not the townsfolk want a building there, period? I'm kind of siding with Dave here, is that it's a very small contingency of folks here tonight, and it feels to me like we're talking about two options: we renovate it or we tear it down and build it new. I think it's an important third option with a full understanding of the costs associated with the tear down, at least maybe put the thing on pause. And I know that may have implications with some of the grandfathered things that are allowable now that may not then, but it feels to me like I want to make sure that the survey is open-ended enough that folks understand that is also an option. It doesn't feel like we're really discussing that as a potential, adding to the green space there, I don't think is a terrible idea until we all determine what the town wants or needs there to begin with, right?
Yeah, and the survey response is is that number of survey replies is on par with similar surveys that have gone out, and there is a recurring group that does it, and not everybody shows up at town meeting. Nobody asked me.
Right.
But yeah, that there was definitely the idea that once you remove that yellow building, it really does connect the two public spaces that we now have down on the waterfront. When you walk down there visually, it is right in the middle of everything, and we've designed the park kind of around that little space. So it's sort of it's a funny little white elephant there. Didn't really have a major, purpose at the time, so we kicked it down the road. Here we are, caught up the can again.
But leveling it is gonna be extremely expensive too, and then we can't recoup anything once we've leveled it. Is that basically accurate or?
If you were to demo it, there's obviously a cost associated with the demolition and rehab and stabilizing it after the fact.
Right.
And then to the grandfathered use, you have, I believe, up to a year, might be 18 months. A year, if you wanted to build within that footprint. There's still other areas.
Did you say it was built?
I think estimate in the 50s.
Yeah, we were thinking
Plus or minus.
to the 18, right?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was the ever since I was.
It's still in the flood zone. Yeah, when I say grandfathered, it's
We were born in the
grandfathered from a
70s, right?
flood zone perspective.
Right.
Yeah, so you'd have up to a year to do it, but that year comes very quickly once you think about applications and permitting and everything that goes along, design and everything with it.
But that only means if you wanted to keep part of the building within the flood zone, you could still build something outside.
You could still build something outside the flood zone, but. I mean, I think what we're tasked to do is this initial feasibility and assessment of the existing conditions and receive feedback and what potentially could happen, but after this scope has been completed and there's a general consensus of what should happen with this building, then phase 2 would happen, where you start talking about the more technical details and who's going to be going in there and the actual site plan application process and stuff. Right now, it's more of an initial first step feasibility analysis to present the facts as they are for the existing conditions and then weigh some options about what theoretically the potential for this area could be.
And, pardon me if you've already answered this in some way, but the building itself could also stay as it is for
That's certainly an option, sure.
like 5 years or until the town comes up with a plan of what might be placed there.
It was like 4 options.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's important to highlight that in the survey. It feels like.
Guess I would ask what kind of liability the town might incur for renting out space that they now know has grave issues. I don't know the answer to that, but.
It'd be nice to see a cost with taking what there is there currently. Improving to get rid of asbestos, the hazards, any rot, moisture. Granted, it's got a foundation that's below grade. When the super tides come in, water go into it many years. But figure out how to mitigate some of the major concerns, so it is rentable to even the current tenant or any future tenant. What that cost would be today. If we find a buyer or not a buyer, a leaser that wants to do a business in there, most people will rent and they'll do the build out. That's their cost. So it's not up to the town to do the build out for whoever wants to go in there. So on your point, making the building safe for a tenant to be in it should be our primary concern right now. And then look for the future. What do we want to do with the building? The town still owns the building. We're still liable for what's going on in that building. So we need to take care of those issues first and then look the long range. Now, if we improve the building enough, yes, we can move the rent up. We haven't moved the rent up much, to the tenant there because we know we're giving them per building. So those type of improvements, yes, we can recoup some of it, but some of it's our responsibility anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're kind of presenting as option one is rehabbing the existing building and having it a rentable space for the existing and or potential future tenant.
How much are we thinking? 600.
Yes, it's 600.
Is it for the whole building or just one space in the building?
The whole building. And they heat it, they pay electricity, so. So utilities are under them.
Yep.
And given all the windows and the single pane windows, I can't imagine what his heating costs really are because there's no insulation in the building.
Very familiar with that.
As you've noticed. A lot of things in the town built that time did have it. A lot of water damage on that was done prior to the roof that was on about 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. The original roof was in bad shape. So the new roof, and so some of those, because nothing's been done to the building, those tiles have had stains in them for the last 10 years.
This has been really informative. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone
All those things together.
Could
else? Is there someone online?
Yeah. So I thought that was a good point that was just made about trying to really understand what the cost of a rehab would be. Personally, when I look at the photos that I looked at this afternoon and what you've just put up there online, I do sort of look at it as am I going to be able to find all the right parts to my old lawnmower? As opposed to, can I just go out and get a new lawnmower hopefully make an assumption that, my cost of maintaining it over time would not be that which would be associated with, such an extensive rehab. But is that something that if could we get something like that done? And is that chargeable to, not operating money of the town, but to the grant?
I'm sorry, to do what? I got caught up on the
To-
lawnmower parts.
Okay, sorry about that.
Right.
I'm hoping for the grass to come back soon. No, but okay, so if we were to address it like, okay, we have to solidify the foundation. We have to make it, so that we don't have water coming in. We have to eliminate and remediate mold wherever it exists. We have to remediate asbestos where it exists. We have to put in new windows. We have to insulate. So if we were to approach it by just to say, all right, what do we do to put this building into a condition where somebody could look at it and say, yeah, this is something I'd want to rent? I mean, but is that something that can be paid for by a grant as opposed to taxpayer money?
Yeah, I mean, everything we're talking about is able to be funded by the
Okay.
TIF. So it's
Okay.
it's the same deal as the old
Okay.
town hall. I would
Okay.
treat it
Okay.
in your mind as the same situation.
All right. So let me ask. Yeah, thank you. Let me ask another question. There were comments earlier about taxpayers not wanting to pay additional taxes, but am I oversimplifying this by saying if whether we renovate or whether we build new, if everything in this package of what gets agreed upon, if that all went against some form of a grant, then once the building is ready to be reoccupied, what is, if any, the tax burden to the taxpayers?
I mean, it was kind of explained earlier, if we've
Yeah, I
got a
missed it.
tenant, they are staffing it, they're managing it. I mean, yes, we already rent the building and have to keep up with whatever that is, so that's no additional effort here.
Okay.
There
But
is maintenance on the building going forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Right.
is a cost.
But there's maintenance on the building now. There's presumably more maintenance than there would be. And the taxpayers have been paying that maintenance cost for a long time. So I guess what I'm really trying to ask is there a new set of expenses moving forward that once whatever type of development or redevelopment we undertake, once that is completed and there is a tenant in the building, there isn't really any burden to the mill rate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes and no, I guess, if you think about it, if they built and rebuilt a new building before there was a tenant. If we decided to rebuild it, we didn't have anybody to lease it yet, we'd be paying for cheap electricity, which is currently paying. And there's always a potential that it could be more a taxpayer burden depending on what happens. But the goal is for there not to be.
yeah,
But like, I think what your first question was that was important is, we're talking about there's 4 options, right? Leave it, tear it down, rebuild it where it is, or make it larger. What are the costs associated with that? So right now, it looks like based on this presentation, there's 2 options. When we first came in, I felt like there was 2 options.
well, what we're doing is
the
we're just trying to get the cost, like, we're not saying what the options are, but we do need to know, like, there's 4 options, but we don't even know what 2 of the options would even feel like, so that's what we're doing today.
But my understanding, no matter what the cost is, we have some financial money coming to the tips. So the cost to the town is reduced for the actual building of whatever, remodeling or building the building. So when we say it's gonna cost $500,000. That's not $500,000 from the town, that's from this TIF. And then whatever happens after that, it'd be the maintenance on the building itself. So it's not really a tax burden to build a building, tear it down or remodel it.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. That's the point I'm trying to establish is, yes, you may have to plow over there. That may be part of the fact that we're a landlord and a tenant in that lease says that you're going to plow, but presumably most of your ongoing maintenance costs are going to be recovered from the fact that you're bringing in revenue from a lease with an organization or organizations who are occupying the building.
So, I think it's awesome to have this discussion here. I think earlier on, the engineers were saying it's about 450,000 to remediate, renovate, elevate the current structure to make it good. Did I get that number right?
So I should have clarified that we're not quite at the level for both options yet.
Sure.
We haven't reached out to contractors to get costs.
Yeah.
What we're doing for when I threw out the $350 a square foot, that's what we're seeing for new construction costs these days. I just caution that we don't want to think that we're going to spend half of that to renovate the existing building, because sometimes when you get into waterproofing foundations and things, you could spend a little bit more. So we really need to take that next step, because it could be a range. The existing building is 930 square feet, so it is smaller than that almost 1,400 square foot building, which is where the larger number we keep talking about was based on.
Right.
So
okay, cool. That's good. Even if it is tip, it does seem like you get a better return on your investment with the town, building it not in the flood zone. So if you're going to build a building, not in that area, it does seem prudent to me. Even if it's coming from a TIF fund, you reduce your risk to having to fix it later on.
Yeah, and even that's definitely going to happen. Even if the existing building were to stay, there's ways to get that building outside the flood zone. You'd have to flood proof it. There's some grading required. Potentially would need to go through a FEMA letter of map revision for fill associated with it to designate that outside of the flood zone. But there's certainly ways to do it, whatever scenario. Unless you just, the scenario is do nothing, then that's obviously going to stay as is. But
Would you know enough in questioning what you just said, which makes a lot of sense, but would you know enough to determine whether the impact on insuring the building would be less if we were, say, not in the flood zone? I mean, so what I've heard you say is that we're sort of grandfathered into that location, but without having expressed that, does that location carry an additional insurance burden that moving it even several feet would lessen that ongoing burden? I know you maybe not an insurance person, but would you know that?
yeah, so if you're in the flood zone, you're likely, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the town, but you're likely probably paying some sort of flood insurance associated with that. Okay. So getting it outside the flood zone, you likely wouldn't be subject to that flood insurance. Yeah. But it's also not just the horizontal location, it's the vertical elevation of it as well, including the basement. So when I say that the elevation of the grade is 8, and that's the flood zone elevation, that's the surface grade. So the basement itself is significantly below that. So that's what we were talking about before, was essentially filling in the entire basement, putting a new slab down, waterproofing it, etc. And then with some minor regrading on the waterfront side, you could likely get out of that flood zone through a letter of map revision for fill through FEMA, and then get out of that flood insurance requirement.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a good enlightening answer. I appreciate it.
So in your study, did you look at lifting the building off the foundation? Filling in the basement, as you say, bringing the grade up to 2 feet that it needs, get it out of the flood zone. And then pouring a slab and setting the building back down, is that part of your process?
That's what we've discussed. We haven't talked about any costs associated with that, but that is what we're.
Because that's all that's needed to get it out of the floodplain.
Right, and the finished floor, the building itself is actually 3 feet above the elevated surface in that location. So the finished floor itself is already outside the flood zone. It's more of the building walls in the basement and the grade that touches the foundation wall is within the flood zone, which incorporates the entire building. So that's why it's relatively easy to get that building outside the designated flood zone.
So the current floor is out
Right.
of the flood zone,
Yeah.
but yeah, it would.
The first
have to
floor,
be-
We could jack it up a foot and put a crawl space under it and it'd still be out of the flood zone.
Probably not.
We talked
But
about
we
that.
did
Yeah, the
talk
crawl
about that.
space, yes, that gets
There's
strange with
other
FEMA
issues.
regulations as
Yeah.
well, yeah, there's just. Having it be up in it, right, a slab
A
gets
slab.
everything out of the flood zone.
It's the simplest and cleanest, likely cheapest.
That would be cool to see those numbers, just in case.
Have you, based on this discussion, do you see major or any changes to the survey that you expect to put out on Monday? It seems like, some understanding of the costs, some understanding of the implications for the taxpayer, as well as discerning better the options, seems to be an important piece from what I'm hearing. So do you see that this still being realistic to put out the survey on Monday? And I know that if it's on Monday, then there has to be a strategy for how to disseminate it. I mean, I don't know, the town have a master list of email addresses, or I'm just trying to think of how.
The newsletter, but I think that just.
The newsletter, I think it's already gone out, hasn't it?
Well, every Friday, there's an e-newsletter that goes out if you're subscribing to the town's
Right.
e-newsletter. You've got Facebook. You've got the kiosk. You've
We've
got
got a big
posters.
meeting Tuesday night that every committee is gonna be at, that we can
Yes,
get the
select
word
board
out through
meeting.
all the committees
Facebook.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Bodenhammer comes out on Monday.
Yeah, there you go. So, I mean, I think it's really obvious. One question that I'm hearing is, what do we do with the building? Open space, keep it in place, no upgrade. Which I think we might need to say something about why we're doing this, but that's another one, renovate in the new building. So that's one question. But as far as like taxpayer implications, Maureen, I don't know exactly what that
Well,
question
express
is.
the fact that these are all, funds that are available to the town without taxpayer.
You just mean information.
Right.
Yeah, like without raising the mill rate, et cetera, like
Right.
people just don't know these details.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so there's info needs. But as far as like the questions go, besides, I mean, that was pretty much the same type of questioning we've had before. But I think we also, what we really wanted to get at was what ideas are out there for this building as well. So I would like to still ask that, and it could be open-ended. I don't want to. Yes, we showed it with tables, but like literally the sky's the limit, like we want those. So I think there'd be probably an open-ended question as far as,
Without the picture.
Yeah.
So there will.
well, without the tables, but
Yeah.
yes,
without
but the floor, a floor plan without the tables.
Yeah, just
Well,
the
basically,
basic.
so we have to give you guys something to react to. There's no
Right.
way we're coming into an empty room with and going, what do you want to do? So we had to give something, and of course, it's not gonna be what everyone wants or needs or anything, but we had to have something, and then also, as we said, it was really to get that Worst case scenario is totally the wrong,
It's not,
but
yeah,
the biggest use.
the
Demand.
biggest demand associated with
Yeah.
a potential use of the site.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with 4 scenarios. I get the David's nothing. But when you start to talk about renovating, I mean, where do you start and stop? You know, it shouldn't have a ramp, it shouldn't be handicapped accessible. It shouldn't have windows that actually open and close and seal. I think to leave it as is probably not a realistic option. Because that, now that we're aware of the asbestos and the mold, it becomes a liability to the town. Sure does. Sitting still.
And explaining that might be helpful, so that we're not sitting there 10 years later going, oh, we still didn't do anything with this building yet. Right?
Just tear it down.
But I agree, the biggest option, that people are gonna come up with, they're gonna see money, it's gonna take money. And not knowing that the TIF could pay without getting any grants, 100% of this project, like the town hall. No, people will see that number like we did at the town hall, it's 1.4 million. And everybody just don't walk away, tear it down, let it fall down. And we found another way to make the TIF change so that it accepted that as a proper use for the TIF. And townspeople voted on it, building's done, it's more than usable, it's a beautiful building now. This is the same idea, if people think that 500,000 is gonna be taxpayer dollars,
of course,
nothing's gonna happen.
Right.
All you gotta hear, tear it down for the 10 to 20,000 is gonna cost us to mitigate that. So we gotta make sure that message is out there that it is covered.
Yeah, I can do
And
that.
that'll open up a lot more ideas when they don't have the first thing in their mind is, I can't afford my taxes,
Yep.
so why
Yep.
am I gonna ask for something else to be done?
Kate asked a question on the chat there.
Oh, thank you. Who are the current tenants and when does their lease end? Well, they just got renewed, right? Last meeting.
Marty's lips are moving, but I'm not seeing any sound coming out.
It's a technology
I'm sorry.
company.
I'm sorry. I'm technically challenged. No, I was going to say that I think if that was the only thing that came out of tonight, which it won't be, that is a very, very important piece because, you know, I am a former chairperson of the finance committee of the town of Bodenham for 5 years. And believe me, every time we presented budgets where that mill rate went up, despite the good things that I personally believe we were doing with the money, I understand the impact that it had on all of our community, no matter, you know, what economic level you're at. So I think if we can get ahead of that question, I think that makes a tremendous amount of sense. I'll also admit that, you know, I've been out of Bodenham for 4 years and now I'm back. Is as far as seeking opportunity for some I guess the best word I can use is some entrepreneur coming to us with a proposal. Is this anything that BCDI could help us with? I mean, I always read about how much they're doing with local business. Could we talk to them and say, hey, could you be a mouthpiece for the town to sort of get ideas generated that could be considered?
Yeah, of course.
I'm just.
Hey, did you hear us when we told you who was the tenant? It's a technology company. And I think it was just renewed a couple months ago.
October? I think it's October. Yeah, that's usually what it is.
So it's a year-long lease that just got renewed?
Yes.
Okay, and it's only one tenant?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Have we talked to them about whether they're interested in continuing the lease if we do all of this? Like renovating or a new building? Would they want to stay or go away and come back?
Here, so-
The tenant is here.
And it's kind of curious to see what the ideas were, so I'm kind of open for anything there, so.
Would you like to buy it?
I don't think the town wants to, like.
That's not an option that the town,
Town ain't selling.
the previous board and myself would ever sell a piece of property in the middle of our two parks. That's a piece of town land, but we tear it down long before we'd ever sell that piece of property.
Well, sell it as a lot, you can keep the rest.
Would never be sold. You'd have a hard time in the middle of two parks.
I understand the other part was that if that was a restaurant, they couldn't get a liquor license. Right? And I think that's also came out one time.
No, well.
Three Robbers hasn't
Yeah,
been that.
the rules have changed because
You should sign.
Three Robbers pretty much.
No, I thought it was town land, you could get them. sell it.
But now, we want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not on town land, it's private property.
Right. It has to be in the lease differently, yes, there is word that has to be, so if it's not a town.
Yeah, the business has a license and therefore a liability on the town.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's, I mean, done a lot.
And for ones that don't know, I'm Mark Favorall on the select board, for anybody in the room. One of the. That's here.
Anything else? I've got a lot of homework already, but go for it.
Homework, we can come up with a few more.
Email me, planning@boatenham.com.
So is there a tentative plan to get the information out to the publication on the 12th prior to the meeting on the 13th, as far as all this goes?
I'll get everything out on the 12th.
Amazing, and then, is there any way to mention the meeting on the 13th, because that might be helpful for people to know? Because every committee's meeting on the 13th is a really big meeting, and then the town select board's meeting after that. And I don't know if that was something that could kind of be tied into all this, so people would know how to be involved, if that's possible, to add that on. Just as we.
I mean, it's your guys' agenda.
No, I would say just to mention that the meeting's happening the next day, might be helpful to say to people.
On the survey, you mean?
Yeah,
The survey's coming up the
Sure.
day before your
Right,
meeting,
this is
right?
like a
right,
week-long
that's,
survey.
I was just mentioning that, I didn't know what that was.
I don't think that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, the majority of the survey is going to be after that select board meeting, you know,
Oh,
the survey will still be out there after.
That
the
makes
select
sense.
board meeting.
okay, I was just curious.
But during your select board meeting, actually, I mean,
That would
the
be
committee
nice.
are talking about
Yeah.
it, so
Right,
we'll mention it.
that's great, that's what I was saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all of your thoughtful comments tonight. I appreciate it.
Smarty, good night.
Usually, yeah,